So you probably already know this, but whoever wins the Nigerian presidential election in 6 months' time, they'll inherit a country struggling with insecurity and a massive cost of living crisis. Despite being Africa's biggest economy and a relatively stable country politically, Nigeria has been hit punishingly, witheringly hard by soaring food prices and an economy stalled by terrorism, banditry and a lack of investment, as well as poor management. Things have become desperately hard even for the salaried middle classes, never mind the poorest, with some saying their salaries no longer last through the month. So the elections will be taking place against a backdrop of severe economic hardship for many, which is one of the reasons why the renowned Nigerian economist Mohammed Hayatu-Deen, CEO of Alpine Investment and former chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, attempted to throw his hat into the ring, aspiring to run for president under the banner of the main opposition People's Democratic Party. Well, that bid failed as he was pipped to the finish line by Atiku Abubakar. Well, that hasn't stopped Mr. Hayatu-Deen from snapping at the heels of the presidential candidates, holding them to account and subjecting their policies to scrutiny as the elections draw near. And I'm delighted to say that Mohammed Hayatu-Deen joins me now in the studio. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Charles.
You don't look like a man who's been through the fire of Nigerian primaries or Nigerian sort of the process of running for president, not a hair out of place.
Well, remember that was short and sweet in the sense that I had a gestation of 3 months.
But was it sweet? I mean, how does it feel to have made a bid for the presidential candidacy of the PDP and faltered? How agonizing is that?
I did not find it particularly agonizing because, one, remember that I'm a new terrain. Two, time was short. Three, I went in clear-headed with the knowledge that when you go into these things, you either win or lose. But let me correct you. I did not actually go for the convention in the sense that I actually decided to drop out.
You pulled out before the convention,
before the convention,
right?
Yes.
Well, that's another way of saying that you were pipped to it by Atiku Abubakar, because obviously you realized you weren't going to, there was no point taking it any further.
That's not correct either.
Okay, so what is correct?
What is correct is that I left for my own
personal reasons.
Which I explained actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are those reasons?
The reasons were very, very simple. I noticed essentially that the number of delegates we were actually expecting at the convention was about 3,673. Mainly because the president did not sign the amended Electoral Act. About 10 days to the convention, the entire dynamics changed. So in the event, only 774 people actually turned up. That is elected delegates from the 774 local governments. And I felt that it was very, very difficult for a newcomer like me to cope with these demands and stresses at the last minute. Principally, that was the reason.
Right, okay. But what did you actually see in there? I mean, we've always heard that the contest for the primaries had become essentially centers of uncontrolled corruption, and whoever pays the most comes through as the winner.
Going around the country, I felt that the delegates in each and every state were actually very, very passionate about contemporary issues affecting our society, our economy, our politics, our national security. So in every single room or town hall, these were the issues that I spoke to. And most of the questions I fielded were related to those particular set of issues.
Right.
Clearly, money had a very big role to play in it, undoubtedly so.
So after all that, do you still have political ambitions? Are you preparing yourself to launch another bid sometime in the future?
We've just finished the primaries. We're yet to go into a general election. I would expect that everybody who lost in this contest will rally around Atiku Abubakar so that we can make the best case to Nigerians so that we can actually win this election, both at the national and the sub-national levels. I'm not concerned about myself at all, not in the least.
We're talking about rallying around Atiku Abubakar. We heard earlier in the PDP, the two big opposing divisive factions, the Atiku and Wike groups, have apparently met to resolve their differences. Has Atiku neutralized the opposition? Is everything now all shipshape and seaworthy, or are resentments simmering under
this? This is not an event, it's a process. And there are different groups at different levels within the party that are actually trying to stitch things together. I am not by any means at liberty to make disclosures as to what discussions are going on behind closed doors. But in the final analysis, remember that this is politics. Politics is all about debate, it's about compromises and consensus. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that in the fullness of time, and with a long time to go, these things are going to be resolved. It's happened before, and it will happen tomorrow.
Right, and they'll be resolved before the elections.
Long before the election.
Right, and if I might get you to comment briefly on the news that Atiku Abubakar has thrown down the gauntlet on restructuring, saying this country cannot progress without it. So what's your reaction to that? How much does it recognize that this country now urgently needs to go in a different, much more realistic, developmental direction?
Well, restructuring means different things to different people.
What does it mean to you?
What it means to me, from my own perspective, is that number one, the size of government, broadly defined, both at the federal and the state levels, the size is way too big. And the cost of administration is humongous, that it is actually eating very, very deeply into the fabric of our development. And therefore there is a need, I think, to shrink government. What I do think, without prejudice to what the party thinks or what the candidate thinks, is that we need to shrink the country and probably collapse it along the 6 geopolitical zones of the country and have a governor or a premier for each of the constellation of states that actually make each geopolitical zone. Once you do that, automatically you are getting rid of, for example, in the Northeast, you are getting rid of 5 governors or 5 premiers. You are getting rid of all of the commissioners, permanent secretaries, government houses, motor vehicles, security, salaries and wages of civil servants, etc., etc., etc. Most of these can then be deployed into the cost of, into developmental projects. And I dare say that it will also result in more fierce competition for political office. And in the process, because all the constituent states are competing for that one spot, you are more likely to get people of character and quality and distinction, in my view. So that is one thing that it means to me. The other is that at the level of the federal government, I would like to see legislative reforms, in the sense that I would like to see legislators who are actually working part-time and not bicameral, by unicameral. You can bring down the cost of administration at that level. And I think since the introduction of the presidential system of government in 1999, the federal government has become a monster. That what you need to do is to actually right-size it so that it becomes a lean, muscular fighting machine. And you can save a lot of money. You can take out a lot of bureaucratic headaches as well.
Well, that's an absolutely, I mean, brilliant analysis there and recommendation. You are friends with Atiku Abubakar. Does he listen to you?
Atiku Abubakar listens to everybody who cares to actually see him.
Yeah, but I'm wondering whether this analysis that you just gave us, which I think is absolutely brilliant, whether that is in some ways at par with his own version of restructuring. I mean,
because of the hustle and bustle of the campaign, we haven't discussed this.
Right.
But I assure you that when I see him, I'm going to raise this issue with him.
Right. And as the elections approach, I mean, how much of a defining moment is this for Nigeria? What are the issues that Nigerians are talking about as the elections draw near?
So consider an airplane in mid-flight that explodes. The fuselage goes in a different direction, the wheels, the communications, propulsion, combustion, engine, wings. Unfortunately, also the passenger littered all over a vast place. And that aircraft is gone. Nigeria is facing tremendous hurdles at this point in time and is struggling very, very badly. And what I think is that the nation needs to be brought together. There are problems of unity, deficits of trust, education and health is a challenge, the economy is shambolic, and as far as our societal values are concerned, every manner of vice in mankind is visibly manifested here. Internationally, we've lost our reputation and we've been left to our own devices. There is huge demographic explosion and enormous amount of migration from rural areas to the cities that puts a lot of pressure on infrastructure. So Charlie, we're actually in a bad place. The whole place, I think, needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. Two things need to be done in my view. One is that in the remaining life of this administration, every patriotic Nigerian should actually help in giving them a safe passage. So if we wear our hats as Nigerians, regardless of party, regardless of religion, we should actually hold a summit with the federal government to try to manage this situation as best as we, as citizens, can. All the leaders of political parties, the presidential candidates, I would encourage them to actually meet with the president, if the president is willing, to sit down and do some repair work in the meantime. That's number one. To actually see us through this. It's in nobody's interest to just keep on condemning the government ad nauseum. It's not going to take us, we might not even see the election. That's terribly important. Second thing that we need to do, in my view, is that we need somebody of great competence, character and experience who would be our shepherd as we move towards 2023. That, I think, is the seminal issue that is confronting this country. And we need to evaluate the candidates very, very closely.
And as those elections approach, do you detect a disconnect between the political class and a majority of the voters, or are they better connected this time?
Well, I think to do that, you have to examine a couple of issues. Number one, every society is actually established to organize themselves in such a fashion that under their respective constitutions, laws, statutes, and custom, that there are roles ascribed to the leaders and the followers, and each is supposed to play their part in promoting and maximizing the national interests. Second point is that in so doing, the leadership is supposed to cater for the well-being and welfare of the Nigerian people. And it is their job to ensure that they are able to advance the life of the people, by giving them a very high quality of life, to make them safe and secure. And therefore, what I do see is that we actually face an existential threat at this moment in our history. And therefore, there is the need to actually identify a class of leaders who can actually take us out of this very, very difficult quagmire, if I might say.
And when you say identify a class of leaders, beyond your party loyalty, because you're a member of the PDP, do you see any such leaders?
Well, the person that I see clearly for me is Atiku Abubakar. Atiku, if you'll allow me, has been around for a very long period of time, has come to embody this country, understands it very deeply and profoundly, has served in very high office, has been responsible in helping out with very bold and courageous reforms between 1999 and 2007. He is quick on his feet. He is absolutely rock solid, understands issues very, very clearly. He has empathy for the common man, but most importantly, he's a promoter of best practice when it comes to enabling business. And I think under his leadership, this country is going to go places in terms of very bold and courageous economic reforms, in advancing the frontiers of progress and prosperity, and in bringing about a society that is knowledgeable and enlightened. I see Atiku as that person.
But then, of course, you are a renowned economist. You were the chairman of the respected think tank, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. I'm sure you know that the cash in circulation in the Nigerian economy is limited at the moment. So if he plans to fund things, for instance, by raising taxes, isn't that simply going to make things more difficult? Because now you'll make the cost of living for ordinary Nigerians even harder.
Respectfully, I do not agree, because I think there are many ways of skinning a cat. There are, at least in my view, 10 to 12 different ways of actually making this economy very liquid and solvent. First and foremost, we would be able to restructure our debts. If you have the right kind of government that inspires the right kind of confidence, it can approach the community of lenders to get them to actually restructure these debts and expand the life, the tenor of these debts, so that cash can be released in order to fuel development. Secondly, we are sitting on a lot of commodities in this country. If we do not allow leakages to take place in the oil and gas sector, I believe that we can do some forward sales of commodities in order to raise money. We can also liquefy assets by selling them in order to raise funds. At a very difficult moment in our history today, if we're able to design a plan of action and go to advanced climes, put a case for Nigeria, we can ask for some debt relief. It's been done before, it can be done again under the right kind of conditions. Taxation.
But I mean, the people are simply going to say, you know, you borrowed a lot of money, you irresponsibly borrowed money, and you know, you just kept borrowing.
But you have to give them, at the same time, you have to give them a plan as to what you are going to do.
Right.
And persuade them, beyond a shadow of the doubt, that those very bad habits and bad manners are not going to manifest under the watch of the new administration.
But of course, this period in the world's history is not the same period as the 1990s. I mean, the whole world is going through economic difficulties. In addition to those who've mismanaged their own, there are also bigger global issues right now. Every single country is going through inflation. They're going through, they're on the verge of recession, if not already in recession. I mean, the cost of living is going up and all the rest of it. I mean, a lot of countries, especially the richer countries, are not very inclined to be forgiving of debt at this point.
Let me say to you that no condition is permanent. And that because these countries are going through a transient problem, their economic fundamentals and the fundamentals of their institutions are still very, very strong. Once they climb out of that, I think we are going to have listening ears from them.
But let me ask you to put on your hat. I mean, you've got a hat on, but think of it metaphorically as your hat as a leading economist, as a former chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group that was there to advise the government and come up with economic plans and so on. And not think of yourself as necessarily a PDP person, looking at all the frontline candidates, and you know, it is fair to say that there's just about 4 of them at the moment. Do you think they've all identified the economy as a problem, but have not perhaps yet invested in the thinking that's going to make improvements possible? So in the mind of many Nigerians, at the moment, their promises are just a wish list, and life will predictably continue as it is.
Well, I'm going to be partisan here.
Right.
In the sense that I think Atiku Abubakar has put together a very robust and compelling plan. His Covenant for Nigeria. There's the abridged document, which is about 65 pages. And that document reads like a storybook. It's easily digestible. It clearly spells out exactly what the issues are today, his prescriptive solutions, and how he's going to resolve them. There's a bigger document that was released not too long ago, which is about 165 pages. And I think anybody who reads these things together, either in total or in parts, knows that you're dealing with somebody who clearly has a very good grip of where Nigeria is today, where it was, and where it should be going, and the kind of very robust set of actions that he intends to take in order to deliver us from this life of misery to an era of prosperity. I will leave you to actually review them if you have not already reviewed them.
Right, but I'm going to ask you again, because you are seen as, certainly from an economic point of view, as someone who's very well respected and who is very objective in his assessment of the state of the economy and the way the candidates at different times in Nigeria's history have tried to deal with that situation. Is there much hope to be found in what the politicians say on the campaign trail? I mean, because the promises they make often remain just that. I mean, they don't exactly tell you how they're going to fund those promises, do they?
So, you've raised an absolutely important point here, and it's quite valid. I myself, from time to time, get trepidations about this. Number one, it depends on the character of the person, in terms of who the person is. Why is he actually looking for this thing? What does he want to do with it? It's not a toy. The country is quite shambolic at this point. The economy is falling apart. Are you going in there to have a tea party? Or are you going there to actually roll up your sleeves?
Absolutely.
And give Nigerians every single atom of your energy and your imagination and creativity to do this? Second, are you going to assemble a team of people who are actually better than you in every faculty and department of government to do this thing? Do you have the courage of your own conviction not to actually assemble people who are friends and to actually monitor and evaluate performance of people and to deal with them very severely, deliberately and instantly when people fall out of line? Are you going to be a very prudent manager of resources, or is it going to be business as usual? Are you going to reach out to all of Nigerians and make sure that every Nigerian, regardless of where he comes from, what his background is, what his face looks like, is your own son or your daughter or your brother or your sister or your nephew or your niece, and treat them as such, and give every Nigerian an important opportunity to deliver. And that you yourself must be humble, see yourself as a servant of the people, and never allow a bunch of sycophants and praise singers and rumor mongers to circle you. You should get rid of them as fast as you can. I think once you have a person who has that kind of outlook, and who embodies it and assimilates it, and has the right kind of plan, and is very, very good in execution, because implementation and execution is actually 80% of it. So I completely agree with you that a blueprint is a blueprint. All these soft sides of the issue are actually what define a government, in terms of the difference between a good government and a bad one.
I have to say, Mohammed Hayatu-Deen, it's been absolutely fascinating talking with you, enormously enlightening. Perhaps you should have continued running for high office, and hopefully you will do that again. But I mean, it's been a tremendously enlightening just talking with you, and I want to thank you very much indeed for coming in and talking to us. And Mohammed Hayatu-Deen is a renowned Nigerian economist, CEO of Alpine Investment, former chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and a former presidential aspirant under the opposition People's Democratic Party. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Charles.